Welcome back to our last video in this mini-series on stated preferences. Our previous video talked about how to use least absolute deviations or median regression to estimate preference parameters in stated probabilistic choice models. And we also talked about how stated probabilistic choice models are generalizations of rank-ordered and discrete choice models. Today we'll explore how powerful the stated choice probability models are in terms of what they can get us for preference heterogeneity, but we'll also discuss some of their drawbacks as well. As always, it's important to understand trade-offs so that we can use the best tool for our particular circumstances. One of the major advantages of this elicited probability or stated choice probability experimental data is that we can handle unobserved heterogeneity quite flexibly. And the reason that we can do that, why we can say more about preference heterogeneity, is because we have more information about preferences, as we discussed in the video just prior to this. And this is because we have more information than just a 0-1 or a rank ordering. We can tell exactly how far apart these options are in the space of latent utility that they occupy. And this is going to allow us to effectively estimate nonparametric mixing distributions. And the way that we can do this is we can actually estimate individual specific gammas. So this links back to our mixed logit model where we assumed that gamma I was some unobservable variable drawn from some distribution. But here we can actually estimate the gamma i's because we have enough information to reliably do so. And one thing that you'll see is that the resulting distribution is almost never normal, in that it's either skewed or leptokurtic or whatever else is non-normal. If you're not familiar with the word leptokurtic, look it up. It just means fat-tailed and peaked in the middle. So here's an example from one of my papers that's used these methods. That's in Journal of Econometrics in 2022. We estimate these location choice preferences that I introduced in an earlier video of this mini-series. And we use those to back out what the willingness to pay would be for each either amenity or disamenity. And then when we estimate at the individual level, we can actually obtain individual specific willingness to pay, and we can plot it. And as you can see here, this does not look like a bell curve. This looks highly skewed. And in particular, there's some people out in the far right tail that really like being close to family, in the sense that they would be willing to give up quite a bit of money to keep their family around. But then there's other people that actually want to be apart from their family. They would actually require compensation to have their family around. So hopefully you're feeling excited about these stated choice experiments. Hopefully you're feeling like this could really be a good way to answer a lot of questions. And I think you would be right, but at the end of the day, there's no silver bullet. We still have to get back to this conundrum between stated preferences and revealed preferences, in the sense that stated preferences can just be cheap talk. And so can we really take them at face value is a legitimate question. And one way to get around this is to conduct a follow-on survey. So if you ask somebody, are you going to choose Thai or Mexican or nothing else for food on Friday? Then if you followed up with them on Monday and asked them where they actually went on Friday, you could get some validation of what they told you on Thursday when you asked that question. So that's the idea, is that in between the time when they took the probabilistic choice survey and they actually met with you again as a follow-up, they made a choice in between those 2 points in time. And so that can be a validation of the statement that they told you before the choice was made. It's common to see published papers do this, and in general, the stated preferences do a pretty good job of lining up with the revealed preferences. So you could say, well, this clearly proves that stated preferences are reliable. On the other hand, it could just be publication bias, that I have only seen the studies where those have lined up. The other ones where they don't line up aren't published. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. Let's talk about just some other details that we need to keep in mind if we're going to be estimating these really flexible preference heterogeneity models. So one thing is that you need to bootstrap to get the appropriate standard errors. And this is because you have panel data and you're using LAD. So clustering at the individual level won't be good enough to account for the correlation in the error terms that would either inflate or deflate the standard errors. So basically what we're going to end up doing is doing a QReg if we're in Stata, which is just the quantile regression command. at the individual level. So we pool together all of the responses that each individual gave. So if they responded to 12 different scenarios, and each scenario has 3 options, and we can only do 2 of those would give reasonable information because of the normalizations. So then that's going to give us 12 times 2 observations, so 24 observations to estimate however many preference parameters we have across all those scenarios. So we would take the union of all of the covariates and put those on the right-hand side. And that's how we would estimate the preferences. This method of doing the stated probabilistic choice is fairly well established by now. This paper in 2010 by Blaslock and Mansky kind of kicked it off. They looked at how people value the reliability of electricity. And then Delavond and Mansky wrote a follow-up paper talking about electoral participation. Wiswall and Zafar have several papers along these lines. Some of them look at college major choice. This one is looking at job choice. And then Delavond and Zafar have a paper on university choice that we talked about in the previous mini-series on counterfactuals. And then my paper with Gizem Kozar and Wilbert Vanderklaw is in Journal of Econometrics and looks at migration within the United States. And there are plenty of other papers that use these methods. These are just sort of the most salient, to me, papers that really I learned how to do this by consulting these papers as I was trying to produce my own research on this question. So this brings us to the end of the mini-series on stated preferences. I hope that I've given you enough so that you know where you can look further if you want to do your own deep dive on this subject. The tools that we've introduced in this mini-series are indispensable for answering some research questions in economics. I hope that you'll keep them in mind if they happen to be useful for a research project that you're doing in the future. In the meantime, thanks for watching and good luck with your research.